Staying at home has been hard on so many of us, but the isolation is creating a different struggle for alcoholics and drug addicts. Chemical dependency specialist and chief clinical officer at A Better Life Recovery, Dr. Meghan Marcum, joins us on the phone now. Thanks so much for joining us, doctor. Sure appreciate your time.
Good morning. Glad to be with you.
Let's talk about how this recent stay-at-home order has affected folks in recovery. I would imagine they can't get together with their peer groups, those small meetings that really help them. How have you seen the impacts with this population?
So you're exactly right. It's a challenging time for all of us right now, staying at home, dealing with isolation. We as human beings are social creatures, and we're meant to live in groups so that we can interact with each other. And as you mentioned, for those in recovery, many of them are finding it especially hard because they really rely on the social support that they get from those in-person meetings. It plays an essential role for many of them in their recovery. And they're used to meeting rather frequently, sometimes multiple times a week. And again, they really rely on those meetings as a way to support each other. So with those not being able to take place in person, thankfully, many of them have transitioned over to online, and there are a lot of resources, including online meetings and chat rooms, where people in recovery can still have an opportunity to get together while they practice social distancing.
You know, I know some of the top triggers for a relapse, of course, stress and a lack of social support, and we kind of now have both of those. So how do you suggest people get the help they need still without, being able to go to those classes? I mean, is the online class the only way for these folks?
It's not the only way, but you're right. We're in the midst of two important factors that even under general circumstances can lead to relapse. And so you mentioned lack of social support, not being able to meet in person, and then stress. And we're all kind of stressed about what's going on right now. Yeah, so what do you do? I think it's really important that you keep a routine. So if you're used to hitting a meeting, every Wednesday after work, it's really important that you continue to participate in your recovery and try to do that if you can online. Or if you have a sponsor, make an appointment to talk to your sponsor at that time so you keep some consistency to what you were doing prior to social distancing in terms of managing your recovery. You don't want to ignore it. You don't want to just forget about it and say, well, I guess I can't go to in-person meetings, so I'm not going to do that anymore. I can't do that anymore. That's the worst thing that we want to see is people kind of abandon their social support. So the second question that you asked is, what can we do to support other people?
Right.
We can definitely be a part of their social support network. So you call in and you want to check in frequently, a little more frequently when you're worried about someone who's in recovery, or if they're in early recovery and you're just kind of worried about the first couple of years. I think it's important, not only are we checking in more often with them, but we also aren't afraid to ask questions. So it's okay to ask questions like, how have you been feeling lately? Have you felt like using? Have you felt like drinking? And questions about their recovery. It's okay to ask those things. I think sometimes people really shy away thinking it's not their business or they don't know what to say. But giving them a space to talk about how they're doing and how they've, been able to get social support, or if they need more social support, by asking those questions instead of just the standard of how are things, are you feeling okay? I think it's also just important that while we're asking these types of questions, we do it in a way that doesn't come off as accusatory or presumptuous. There's already a lot of stigma in mental health in general, but certainly in chemical dependency in the treatment world. So I think that's my only caveat.
Sure.
If you're going to ask these questions, just make sure you do it in a way that is respectful.
Dr. Marcum, really appreciate your time. Just remind us where people can learn more. Is there a website we can steer people towards?
Yes, absolutely. The website for where I work, abetterliferecovery.com, is available. We are continuing to accept new clients. So I think that's important to know that if you're struggling, if you do need help, that there are places that are still open. I've seen lots of emails from places that I have worked with in the past or that are kind of like our partners, and many of them are still open. So I think that's really important. If you're struggling at home, if you're worried about your sobriety, if God forbid you might have already started drinking and using again, it's just important to know that there is opportunity to get help, that places are open. And while we're practicing social distancing and working from home, and there's like this new normal, it might be a really good time to go. You know, I often hear people say, well, I can't be away from my family for that long, or I don't want to, take such a long break from work. But things are already very dynamic right now. So if you are struggling, I think that now is a really good time to go.
Thanks so much for getting that message out, Dr. Marcum. I really appreciate your time. A really important message for people that are struggling out there. Thanks again.
Oh, my pleasure.